In 1996, Loaded blasted its way onto the Sega Saturn after first arriving on the Sony PlayStation. Made by Gremlin Interactive, Loaded featured mindless fun, a killer soundtrack, and buckets of blood. In the gaming magazines, Loaded generally got good reviews, scoring 82% from Saturn Power, 84% from the official Sega Saturn magazine UK, and a massive 95% by Total Saturn, although they were known for over-exaggerating the scores. You choose from one of 6 characters in what is essentially a run and gun game through 15 frantic levels. While the game is repetitive by nature, it particularly comes into its own in the fantastic 2-player mode. The Saturn version stacks up generally well against the PlayStation version and maintains a fairly good frame rate throughout the majority of the time. And each of the characters have unique weapons and special moves. Another highlight of the game is the fantastic lighting effects which are demonstrated throughout the varied levels. Despite the concept of the game being very simple, the game does quickly become quite challenging, although there is a cheat menu for those who can't handle the pressure. While the 1-player is fun, there's no doubt about it, this game comes into its own in 2-player. 2 players equal twice the fun, and despite there being 2 characters on screen, the game performance is very similar to the 1-player. If you want to see more of the Loaded 2-player mode, check out my channel's Loaded 2-player first level video where we play the entire first level of the game and give our opinions on it. Earlier in the year I was testing Sega Saturn games for keyboard compatibility, because despite only listing 16 games that are keyboard compatible, there's actually a lot more, and Loaded is one of the games that works really well with the Sega Saturn keyboard and is worth checking out. Total Saturn Issue 1 featured a big review of Loaded and came with a demo disc that featured Loaded, Euro 96 and Actua Golf, all by Gremlin. The demo had the opening cutscene, menu select and character select screen from the finished game. The Loaded demo had a 5-minute time limit and let you play the second level of the game with the character cap in hands. Having played the demo quite a bit, it is either taken from the finished game or a very late build, as it pretty much plays identical to the finished game that was released. I remember playing the demo and being excited and hoping I'll be able to get the finished game, and also reading the review. 95% by Total Saturn does seem like an over-exaggeration, but this is a really fun game and highly recommended, especially in 2-player. It is high quality and really gives you a feel for the game and makes you want to play it more, which is exactly what you want for a demo disc. Loaded is mindless fun that is best in short bursts, and the soundtrack is a particular highlight. It's excellent. With the success of the first game, Gremlin got to work on the next installment of the game, which was called Reloaded. Similar to the first game, the plan was to release for the Sony PlayStation, followed by a version for the Sega Saturn. The PlayStation version arrived in late 1996 to generally below average reviews, although the official UK PlayStation magazine featured the game on their front cover with a review and demo disc in issue 15. So let's take a look at that demo disc. The PlayStation demo was released around the same time as the game. It featured all the menus of the finished game and the character selection screen, although you can only play one level of the 1-player mode and select one of the game's characters. It also shows a great cutscene of the character and the level briefing. Essentially, this demo is a 1-level demo of the finished game. The level you play is level 3 and you control the character Mama. This probably wasn't the best choice of characters for Gremlin to choose for the demo, as Mama is one of the slower characters and shooting with one arm does make aiming a little more difficult. However, the game frame rate is very smooth and the game is also similar in nature to the first game. You just run round the levels blasting anything that moves. One difference between Loaded and Reloaded you will notice straight away is that when you shoot, your character slows down and stutters. This must have been put in as an effect to make it look more realistic, although I think this was a big mistake and slows down the action. The enemies also visually look worse in Reloaded than the first game, but the level design is improved and more intricate. Despite this, the game is still fun to play. Despite the underwhelming reception on the PlayStation, I was still looking forward to the Sega Saturn version, and magazines began to preview the game. Although the magazines had concerns with the Sega Saturn version of Reloaded straight away, with the official Sega Saturn UK magazine stating they were reserving judgment and hinting the version they had was poor quality. Total Saturn also had a massive 4-page preview of Reloaded. However, the screenshots are almost certainly from the PlayStation version, which was commonly done in some magazines when previewing Sega Saturn games. I remember being very excited when Saturn Power announced in issue 1 that they would have a demo and a review in the next issue of Reloaded. This would mirror the official UK PlayStation magazine, which also had a demo and review in the same issue for when it was released on the PlayStation. But after magazines being reserved about the quality of Reloaded Saturn, would the demo match the PlayStation version, which was essentially a one-level demo with a finished game? The demo also featured a playable version of Actua Soccer Club Edition and a video of Hardcore 4x4, all by Gremlin. The Saturn version starts at the title screen, similar to the PlayStation version, but unfortunately this is where it starts to go downhill. Before the game even starts, the loading time is very long, and I have never heard my Saturn grind a disc so much. Have a listen. Unlike the PlayStation demo, the Saturn demo has no menu screen, no character select screen, no cutscene, and no mission brief, where still it is instantly noticeable that the game has terrible slowdown that ranges from bad to almost unplayable. I honestly don't know what they were thinking releasing this demo. It seems counterproductive to release a poor demo that would put people off buying the game. In my opinion, it was a bad look for Gremlin and Sega Power to release this demo. The actual level itself is the same as the PlayStation demo, but this time you control the character Butch. The demo also differentiates from the PlayStation demo in that you can use as many continues as you want, and the demo ends when you reach the time limit. Strangely, after timing the demo multiple times, it always ends after a different amount of time, in the range of between 4 to 6 minutes. It's a possibility that the frame rate is affecting the timer, although I'm not quite sure on that. While it's easy to be all doom and gloom, looking for the positives, the actual structure of the level and textures of the level look okay. It almost feels like the game is early in development and is yet to be optimised to work on the Saturn hardware. Not surprisingly, there was no review of the game in Saturn Power, despite the previous issue stating there would be. In the same issue of Saturn Power that the demo disc came with, there was also a competition for people who sent in the top 5 scores on the Reloaded demo. They'd win a copy of the game from Gremlin. I'd love to hear from anyone in the comments if you entered the competition. The Reloaded demo also assigns the game's controls differently onto different buttons than the first game on Sega Saturn, while there's a big issue with the music playing very low and sounding drowned out. Another thing I've noticed is if you look closely in the corner of the levels where there should be triangle textures, they're often just black with no texture on them. Again, to me it almost seems like they've quickly ported over the PlayStation code but not optimised the game for Sega Saturn. However, this was supposedly almost ready to release. Once the timer runs out, the game over screen appears, and it's one last time for disappointment in the Saturn version, as it doesn't look as cool as the PlayStation demo game over screen. Reloaded was also one of the games listed that you could get for free if you subscribed to Saturn Power magazine, and adverts in the magazine were also listing the game as for sale. It almost become a running joke that every issue of Saturn Power said the next issue would feature a review of Reloaded, followed by the next issue saying it had been delayed. Until finally in their Christmas issue they announced the game had dropped off the face of the earth, with Gremlin claiming it would not sell enough units. Gremlin started to back away from the Saturn as other much hyped games such as Actual Golf 2 and Actual Soccer 2 were also cancelled for the Sega Saturn. So let's compare the Saturn demo to the released PlayStation version. I've used the retail PlayStation version so I can use the same character on both. The PlayStation demo is effectively the completed game anyway. You can see with the Saturn version playing now that there's slowdown, and also look how slow the bullets move across the screen. We then move on to the PlayStation version with a fast and smooth frame rate. Look how quick the character moves across the screen, and even when stuttering with shooting, still moves really quickly, and look at the bullets whizzing across the screen. The explosions also look a lot better. If we now compare them side by side, you can instantly tell the PlayStation frame rate is far superior, with the characters and bullets zooming across the screen on the PlayStation version and the Sega Saturn version really struggling. In terms of the levels, if you took a picture of them both, they wouldn't look too dissimilar, but in terms of performance, they're night and day. Other differences not yet mentioned include a slightly different colour palette, which was a common difference between games that appeared on both systems, and also the special moves in the PlayStation version look far superior than the Saturn version, with the flame ripping right across the screen spectacularly on the PlayStation version, whereas it stutters slowly on the Saturn version, and the effect of the actual flame doesn't look anywhere near as good. I did try connecting a second controller to the Sega Saturn demo, but it wouldn't allow for 2-player, which in terms of the frame rate is probably for the best since it struggles to run in 1-player. One thing that differentiates my channel from other YouTube channels is that instead of just providing footage of games with generalised commentary, I always try to discover new things in games or show footage not shown in any other videos. Every other video of Reloaded shows people just wandering around aimlessly until the timer runs out. Despite there being a timer, I can exclusively show that the level can be completed on the demo despite the time limit if you are quick. The end of level spaceship battle is blocked off by 5 lasers, and you need to shoot out 5 satellite dishes in order to turn them off. Now, because the character slows down when shooting, you want to avoid killing enemies as much as you can and hold down the run button to move as quick as you can. Now, at some point you will probably die due to being hit by bullets, and you can usually get away with dying once or twice, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. A video of Reloaded was one of the first videos I ever did when I started my channel around 5 years ago, but I've decided to redo some of my old videos to make them higher quality videos with extra content in them. To make sure the footage being compared is fair, all footage of both Saturn and PlayStation in this video is recorded from real PAL hardware. The reason PAL footage was used is because the Sega Saturn demo released with Saturn Power was a PAL demo. I have noticed with some other videos of Reloaded on YouTube that they appear to be running on US or Japanese hardware. You can tell this because the black borders are smaller and the game's running a little bit quicker. I still think if they could have sorted the frame rate and polished this up, it could have been a good fun game for the Sega Saturn, especially in 2-player, although in terms of graphics, gameplay and fun, the first game is mostly better than this one. The frame rate and slowdown is very inconsistent in this demo, ranging from bad to almost unplayable. Playing the game a lot for this video, I have noticed that sometimes you go in a part of the level and the slowdown isn't too bad. Then you play another game and in the same area the character will barely move due to what feels like a single-digit frame rate. For example, now you can see the frame rate is really struggling. There's a couple of people on screen and there's also the machine guns, and you can see the character is really struggling to move at the moment. Bearing in mind that I have got my finger on the run fast button as well, so you should be moving at a fair old pace. We now have just one more satellite to destroy, and luckily it's right next to the gate we want to go through. This is a first time exclusive the boss battleship has been shown on the Saturn demo in a video, and if you thought the frame rate was bad up until this point, wait until you see this. Now once you turn off the last laser and go into the spaceship battle, no enemies will follow you into there. Now due to the poor frame rate, the character starts to shoot really slowly. What I'd recommend so the demo time limit doesn't run out is, while trying to destroy it, don't just hold down the shoot button, but quickly tap the shoot button. This seems to register more button presses and the character shoots more often, giving you a better chance of being able to finish the level before the timer runs out. You can use your special attacks to inflict more damage to the ship, although this tanks the frame rate even worse. So now what we're going to do is we're going to compare it to the PlayStation version side by side. With the PlayStation version having a smooth and consistent frame rate, it looks even worse, the Saturn version. The PlayStation version is on the left with the Saturn chugging away on the right. There are some other differences that we can see apart from the obvious slowdown. The lighting of the ship being shot is flashier on the PlayStation and looks a lot better. The ship bullets also look brighter on the PlayStation version. And also, if you look at the actual ship itself, there's some differences with the stars. Particularly one of the stars is missing off the Saturn one, and the other star on the Saturn one is a lot bigger. And also the positioning of the red lines is different. They're in some places on the PlayStation that they're not on the Saturn, and vice versa. So now is a good opportunity to compare the sound on both of them. First up, I'll play the Sega Saturn sound. Next, the PlayStation sound. Ship is defeated on the Saturn version and slowly turning, but what we'll see is, despite starting to turn later, the PlayStation version will actually start shooting the gate first. If you look at the gate, the Saturn version is green while the PlayStation version is grey with writing on. The green laser appears to be missing on the Saturn version. However, despite there being no green laser, it is there because if you stand under the ship on the Saturn version, I've noticed you can see a little bit of the green laser, but it's clearly not working properly. As the PlayStation ship took off like a rocket, the Saturn version looks like it's having a false start and won't take off properly. It does take off, but it's really slow. And as you can see, they're both finished now, and the Saturn version goes to the poorer version of the game over screen. To finish off, we're going to look at some other bits I've looked into further. So first up, with the first loaded game working so well with the Sega Saturn keyboard, what I thought I'd do is I'd try Reloaded with the keyboard to see if that worked. Now, it works with the keyboard up until this point, and then at the title screen it won't do anything. But if you put the controller in at the title screen and then swap back to the keyboard once the game starts, you can actually use the Sega Saturn keyboard, and it does work really well, particularly when you want to go in a diagonal movement. As you can see here, we're now seeing footage of the game being played with the keyboard. I did also try the 3D controller. Now again, if you plug the 3D controller in once the game starts, it does work with the D-pad, but there's no analog support. I did have a little look around the files of the Reloaded demo as well, just to check that there wasn't more levels there, because what you do find with some demos is actually the full game's there, it's just being restricted. But in this case it is only one level that's there, although what I would say is that Rooms 11 file there, that's identical to the finished PlayStation version. However, the rest of the files are different in this area. I do think there's a very good chance that there's a version of Reloaded almost complete out there for the Sega Saturn, either in a developer's hands or the hands of a collector, but we'll have to see if that'll come to the forefront anytime soon. A few magazine editors from Saturn magazines have said in interviews in the past that they played a late review build of the game. This further strengthens the likelihood there's a copy out there. However, apparently the review version did not play much better than the demo. If you've liked this video, give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Put in the comments below what your favourite unreleased games are for the Sega Saturn, and which games that haven't been dropped online that you'd like to see released next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.